It is interesting what God's put on my heart, and I want to talk to you today about the Jewish DNA of Christianity. We all know something of DNA. We've heard about it. It is supposedly DNA holds all the information about your life, about your physical life, going back into your ancestry. It has been said to be kind of a blueprint of who you are. And in DNA, although we just see that spiral thing, and scientists are still trying to discover more about it, it contains an incredible amount of information. It determines a lot of our life. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Kind of the foundation of life. Within the DNA are different genes, which sometimes are repeated in segments that have to do things like your eye color, your hair, how tall you are, parts of your personality, and depending upon your family. And as a result, there's information we can learn. This is my great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. Old Cap, they called him, Prozel. He came to the Chicago area with his father and mother back in 1854, a long time ago. They came from Bavaria in what's now southern Germany, and they went and bought several hundred acres of land in the northwest of the city of Chicago. Really, it was a town then, it was a small place. And they went out where nobody was living, prairie land, bought these several hundred acres of land, and began to plow it and work it and turn it into a farm. He was a pioneer farmer, incredible man. He actually built the first house in that whole area, a log cabin that they lived in. Later they built a little bit bigger house and then a bigger house. The area where he was finally incorporated into a city. One of his descendants, one of my ancestors, became the mayor and actually is in the Guinness Book of Records. He was the mayor of that town for 54 years without stopping up until the 1960s. That city is in the northwest side of Chicago. It's now called Lincolnwood. And the more I've learned about him, which I didn't really learn until I was older, I didn't hear about him much when I was a kid, but when my mother got older, she started talking more and more about her relatives and the history of the family. And that's when I really found out how much of a pioneer he was and how much of a farmer he was. I believe with all my heart, the more I've learned about him, the more I've discovered about myself. I've realized for a long time, but it clarified it, that I have a pioneer spirit in me. It's what enabled me as a white guy to move into Little Haiti in 1982 and say, I don't care that it's different. I don't care that nobody else like me is there. I'm going. God sent me. Hallelujah. I'm a pioneer. I was a hippie before I became a Christian. I lived on the beach in Mexico for 6 months. I lived a year in Europe. I hitchhiked back and forth across this country. I've got that adventurous spirit to do things like a pioneer. I've also got his farmer DNA in me. I love, my hobby is gardening. You come to my house, my whole yard is full of flowering shrubs and trees and fruits and vegetables. I love it. Both of my sisters love gardening all the time. My brother doesn't have a garden, but he's got several acres in Nevada and he owns 3 horses. There's something to be said about our DNA, about your DNA. And the more I've learned about him, the more I've learned about myself. Now we know Jesus was a Jew. I think Christians don't appreciate fully. I'm just starting to learn more of what that really means. But he was a Jew, and that meant he had the DNA of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in him. All of the apostles had that same DNA in them. All the Jews then, and honestly, all the Jews who have been physical descendants still can say that they have the physical DNA of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in them. Pretty amazing for most of us who don't know beyond a grandparent, or in my case, a great-grandparent, to think that they know that that DNA is in them. All the apostles did. And I believe they also all had the 12 spiritual DNA genes that I'm talking about. And this is what I believe and what I've come to see. Every Christian who has been born again has been born again by the Spirit of God. And we have the spiritual DNA of the Spirit of God. We have the spiritual DNA of Jesus. We know there's countless scriptures that talk about Messiah lives in us, Christ in us, the hope of glory. There's somehow a spiritual unity, fulfillment in that. And I believe that the same spirit that is in Jews is also in Christians. And I believe, as we're going to see, that some of these things haven't yet bloomed fully in us because we haven't realized the fullness of them. Now, this is a new idea, and as a result, there's a saying, I don't know if you ever heard it, eat the fish and spit out the bones. What that means is when you hear something taught, the things you agree with, the things you like, swallow them. As Brother Bob said, digest them, meditate on them. If there's stuff I say that you kind of go, well, I'm not so sure about that, spit it on the side for now. Don't get caught up on the negative that'll choke you. Stay focused on the positive and the things that you feel that God is speaking. This is a good principle no matter where you are in life. Amen. Take the good and forget about the bad. Amen. Now, there is a bond between Christians and Jews. I think nobody doubts that. My theory and my belief is that this bond is much stronger than we realize. It has been said that the Old Testament is the parent of the New Testament. The religion of the Old Testament is the cradle from which Christianity came. And I believe that's true. You know that 21 of the 27 books in the New Testament quote the Old Testament. And there are only 5 books in the Tanakh, which is what the Jews call the Old Testament, that aren't quoted in the New Testament. The bond is incredible. Pastor John Hagee said this: without the Jewish contribution to Christianity, there would be no Christianity. The Jewish people do not need Christianity to explain their existence, but we cannot explain our existence without our Jewish roots. That's true. Christianity is like the second floor, with Judaism as the first. You can't have a second floor without the first. We wouldn't have Christianity if there was no Judaism. Yeah. This whole interest in Jews for me started in the 90s. I used to go to the beach and the boardwalk in Miami Beach and walk for exercise 2-3 times a week. I loved getting out there. The ocean was there, the blue sky, the white clouds, and fresh air. It was great, but I quickly became surprised, mystified, and somewhat dumbfounded because I would often see grown women in ankle-length dresses walking out into the ocean waist deep. And I thought, what the heck is that all about? At first I recognized they were Jewish, but I thought maybe it was modesty. But I later found out it's actually biblical. I also, as I walked on the boardwalk, saw a lot of Jewish businessmen in suits, ties, yarmulkes on their head, or kippahs as they call them, looking relaxed, talking away. Everybody else going out in bikinis and swimsuits, and here's these guys, and I thought, how weird is that? What's the deal wearing kippahs and suits and ties on the boardwalk? But the more I thought about it, the more I sensed what was going on. They knew who they were, and they didn't care what I thought about them or anyone else thought about them. They knew they were God's chosen people, and they believed God wanted them to wear those kippahs, and so they were going to do it. I also noticed that those guys looked like really well-rounded men. They didn't look weird. I've seen Christians wearing gigantic crosses or T-shirts that kind of hit you over the head with their Christianity. It wasn't that at all. They were just normally dressed, looking solid, having solid discussions with the kippahs on their head. Now, it didn't quite look like this. That's some Jews in the beach. That's a little more radical than what I saw. But I found out that they wear those kippahs almost all the time. This is the famous Israeli soccer team, the FIFA team of Maccabees. And they wear their kippahs when they're playing soccer. Kind of weird, but again, they do it because they believe and know they're God's chosen people, and they don't care what anybody else thinks. They don't care what anybody else says about them. They are living the life that they believe God has led them to live. In 2014, my interest in Jews went deeper. This is a picture of an olive tree, and you'll notice there are 2 branches there. And as reading the scriptures in Romans and other places, it talks about many times that the Jews are like an olive tree. That's one of the main biblical references to Jews, comparisons. And it says that we as Christians have been grafted into the tree, which has its roots of Judaism. And that we were wild branches who didn't know about God, and we've been grafted into the olive tree. You notice there's 2 branches there, but you'll also notice how big that trunk is. There have been a lot of other branches cut off, and that's just what the Bible says. There have been several branches cut off, referring to the Jews, but it also says, don't stop, don't put them down. If you who were wild were able to be grafted in and have life, how much more if I decide, God says, to put some of those broken off branches back into that tree. God really spoke to me at this time and called me to a ministry to bring reconciliation between Christians and Jews. Shortly thereafter, I discovered the complete Jewish Bible, a fantastic book. Translated, the New Testament part was translated by a Messianic Jew. That's a Jew who came to recognize Jesus as the Jewish Messiah. He still considers himself a Jew, but he knows he's a Christian. And he translated the New Testament knowing that many of the phrases and references mean something to Jews that we as Christians don't have a clue about. So not only did he do the translation, but he did a magnificent commentary on the New Testament that began to open my eyes to so many things and explain little phrases, both normal and kind of weird ones I read, in the Jewish light, and gave so much sense and power. In the New Testament, in Acts, it says that James, who was the brother of Jesus and the head of the church at this time, said to Paul, "You see, brothers, how many tens of thousands of believers there are among the Judeans, and they are all zealots for the Torah." Zealots for the Torah means there's tens of thousands of Christians, the early church. We know 3,000 got saved on Pentecost, 5,000 shortly thereafter. They were all Christians believing that Jesus, they didn't call them Christians yet, believers that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah, but they still considered themselves as Jews, and they were zealous for the Torah. They still ate kosher, worshipped at the temple, said the prayers, the Amidah every day. They were the Christians. All the early Christians lived as Jews. It was only later when Paul and others went out into non-Jewish countries that non-Jews came into the church. But at the beginning, the whole church, imagine 50,000, even 20,000 Jews in the Jerusalem area who were Christians, but they were fully practicing Jews. We know in Acts it says that the apostles used to go to the temple all the time, every day. And we just kind of thought, well, okay, maybe that's where they hung out. No, they were still living as Jews, completed Jews, because the Messiah had come. Jesus, Yeshua, as they call him, had come. I was also shocked as I read to learn more, really to learn for the first time, about the horrific history of the way the church has treated Jews for the last 2,000 years. We won't go into that yet, but it is absolutely amazing the way the church has been the main force in persecuting, torturing, even killing Jews for 2,000 years. And it has what's created the huge divide, that there's almost no real interaction between religious Jews and religious Christians. And you might work with a Jew or know somebody who lives, but there's a huge divide there. And I firmly believe that the way the world is today, the Western world, which has put prayer out of the schools, made abortion legal, is throwing out every facet of Judeo-Christian morality, step by step, raising youth without any knowledge of what most of us who are older grew up with, even if we never went to church. We, Christians and Jews, must come together to stand against this and to create the foundations again. I believe God wants us to come together. The focus has to shift from what we disagree about to our common faith, ethics, and morality. So let's talk about DNA. There are three major forces that shape your life: your choices, your environment, and your DNA. Your choices when you make a decision about what job to take or where to move, who to marry, what kind of career to have, it makes a difference about your life. Your environment makes a difference. Whether you live in Miami or Atlanta or California or Port-au-Prince or Moscow, the environment around you affects your life greatly. And third, your DNA, that written genetic code that's in you from before you were born. And the DNA is one thing you can't change. Everybody knows that we have similarities with our parents. And I guarantee the older you get, the more you find traces of your parents in you. We've seen so many families that have that resemblance. And where you can see the kid or the daughter in the father or the mother. Sometimes it's remarkable when kids even have beards at a young age because their father had beards. but you can't change your DNA. Now, what I mentioned in the announcement that I made, I kind of consider this ChristianAncestry.com, or perhaps even better, ChristianAncestry.ccc. You've seen the commercials for Ancestry.com where people learn about their heredity and it changes them and affects them. Maybe you've watched the great PBS series on the Roots, where they take a person's DNA and it opens up a myriad of things to them. Well, we're talking about your Christian spiritual DNA during this series. Now, we know that every sibling has a different mix of DNA from their parents. Some have more of one thing or more of another, and the same is true for Christians. But the more you can learn about your spiritual DNA, the better you can become the person God created you to be, and the man or woman God wants you to grow into, and the life that he wants for you. A good example of this is a man who I call Williamson. He's a young Haitian man. His mother, at a very young age, got pregnant in Haiti. And when the family found out, they sent her and her mother to the States, and she had the baby here. That was Williamson. He was born here. He never has met his father, never known about his father. His mother and grandmother never talked about his father, didn't know anything about him. When Williamson was a junior in high school at Edison, he had a chance and needed to take an elective. And you know how it is, if you get a chance to take an elective in high school, you go, let's do something that's fun. And so he decided to take keyboards. He thought that would be fun. He was amazed, and his teacher was amazed to quickly find out he was a natural at the keyboards. And by the time he graduated, he had won several awards and was an amazing, the best keyboard player in the school. He volunteered actually and played here for a while at CCC, and then the church hired him, and he started playing there. And then other churches hired him. And he started making a little bit of a living, not a great living, but a little bit of a living. We would get together every once in a while, and he'd always say to me, PT, you know, I really want to start a business. I feel there's something in me that just wants to, I don't know what to do. I love Shark Tank. I watched all the Shark Tanks on, we watched them online. You know, I would love to start a business or something. I love playing keyboards. It's a natural. I know I'm good at it, but there's something in me would really like to start a business. One day, Williamson happened to be in a bakery, and he started talking to a man, and he found out this man was a good friend of his father's in Haiti. He was, of course, piqued his curiosity. He said, what was my dad like? Tell me about my father. I don't know anything about him. And the man said, well, you know one thing about your father? He was an incredible businessman. You know how hard it is to live in Haiti? He was always coming up with ideas about how to make money. He was like a masterful entrepreneur. He could do anything he set his mind to. He'd get these ideas to buy something and sell it and do some way to make money, and it was always working. It was incredible. As Williamson listened to him, something in his heart clicked, and he realized this entrepreneurial spirit, this itch I've had to start a business is in my DNA. After doing some research and seriously studying how to put together a business plan, how to do the finances and all about it for over a year, he opened up a music school, combining his two talents. And the music school was so successful, in the first year he hired 2 additional teachers. And then he started managing musicians. Now he's doing promotion, he has a band. His entrepreneurial spirit is growing and growing and growing. The reality is simple. When Williamson discovered the gene of his DNA, it gave him the faith to work to developing his natural gift into a great strength. That's the same thing that can happen to you as you hear about who you are and who God has made you to be, what DNA, and particularly the Jewish genes of DNA. I am going to talk about 12 different genes of spiritual DNA. And every one of them, you're going to see, has been in Jews for centuries. Second of all, they're biblical, they're scriptural. I'm not making these things up or pulling them out of the air. Number 3, they're still recognizable in Jews today. And number 4, they're in the DNA of Christians, which means they are in you. So my hope and prayer is that you let these Jewish DNA genes bloom in you like Williamson's entrepreneurial gene has bloomed in him. So the first one that we're going to talk about is resilience. The gene of resilience, which is, quite simply, the courage to come back, or the attitude that will let you bounce back from a setback and do something great. This has been the history of Jews and it is in us. It's the heart of Jewish success, to bounce back from adversity, to bounce back when everything has gone wrong, when everything has fallen apart. In a way, all you have to do is think about all of the countless immigrants who have moved to the United States with nothing. My great-grandparents were some of them, my grandparents on my other side of my family. How many of you and your families came here with nothing? And it was resilience that says we can make it, we can do something, we can move ahead. Eventually buy our own house, buy another house, whatever God has for us, it's possible. Part of it is because we live in a land, a country, our environment allows freedom of choices. Thank God for America. Think of Abraham. He was 75 years old when God called him and said, leave your house, leave your family, and let's go to a new land. And Abraham says, where? And God says, I'm not going to tell you, just come. He was 75 years old. I'm going to tell you, I'm 69 now. If God put a word in my heart and said, pack up, get in your car and start driving. And I said, Lord, where to? And he said, don't worry about where, just go. That'd be pretty tough. Even if I was convinced it was God, like Abraham was. It's not easy. We look at the successes of many of the people in the Bible, and we forget about the hardship that it was. Abraham moved through the land constantly, and he did something very interesting. Every time he moved to a new place, he built an altar. An altar in those days was pretty much just stones piled neatly, on which they would sacrifice an animal to the Lord. But he left those altars, sometimes moved on and came back and worshiped the Lord again at the altars. And those altars stood there, and no doubt people said, what is that doing here? For years. And it was a living testament that when God leads you to do something, he will give you the resilience to succeed. His grandson, Jacob's grandson Jacob, also was incredibly resilient. He was also a rather sneaky guy. That's a whole other story. He had to run for his life when his brother wanted to kill him, leave his family and take off at nothing, just running. And yet when he got where he was going to his uncle's, he became extremely resilient and little by little built up great wealth. And his uncle tried to trick him out of the house. He had to run again and take off. He had to wrestle with God to get God's blessing because his brother found where he was coming and might kill him again. And yet because he did that, God said, this is my kind of man. He keeps going no matter what. He's even willing to wrestle with me. God threw his hip out of joint, but he said, I shall call your name Israel, and from you will be all of my people. And all of the children of his are now the Jews today, to different extents. The scripture says, though the righteous fall 7 times, they get back up. They keep going. In 1982, as Pastor Bob said, I had a vision to come to Miami. And it was because 100,000 Haitians had just arrived on the shores of South Florida in little boats with very little more than the clothes on their back. And God called me to come here and minister and bless the Haitians. So I moved here. When I came, I had almost nothing. I drove that 1954 Chevy pickup truck. That's me in the front there, in 1982. That truck couldn't go fast enough to ride on the expressways. I had to drive the back roads all the way from Texas to Miami. But I knew God had called me, and I knew I'd make it. I was a white guy from Chicago. I grew up in a neighborhood where a few miles away, Martin Luther King was stoned. That was how it was a lily white area. Listen to this. When I graduated from college, I had never personally known a black person. Can you imagine someone graduating from college, a black person, never even knowing a white person? That's where I was at. And yet God called me to move into the inner city here, alone. And I knew it was him, so I did it. And why could I make it? All the odds were against it. But because I had that resilient spirit, and other things we're going to talk about, but that sense that said, I don't care what kind of a mess. Miami at the time was the murder capital of the States, and it was the drug capital of the States. More murders in Miami than anywhere else in the U.S. All the drugs were coming through here. If you've ever seen Scarface, that movie, that's the Miami I came to. It was incredible. And yet God was with me, and God led me, and I had that resilient spirit. So I kept going. It wasn't anything else that did it. And this is the spirit that's been in Jews from the beginning. You remember the story of Joseph. His brothers sold him into slavery and sent him to another land. Can you imagine if your siblings sold you to be a slave to another country? What kind of attitude would you have? Joseph simply put his head down, and it probably didn't happen the first day, but eventually he just put his head down, worked hard, became the model slave, and ended up in charge of all the slaves in his master's household, a rich man. And then when he was falsely accused of rape, he was thrown in prison. How would you feel if you were falsely? I'm innocent, Your Honor. I'm innocent, Your Honor. He was innocent, but he didn't spend all his time complaining. Again, probably not on the first day, but he put his head down, did his best job, around the best prisoner he could be, and he ended up running the prison, even though he was a prisoner. And then, through the grace of God and his timing, he became the number 2 man in Egypt. That's resilience. Moses, the murderer, found that he had killed somebody, driven off in the desert. He had been raised in Pharaoh's house. He probably never got his hands dirty with work. And now he's going with nothing out into the desert by himself to a place he doesn't know. He could have easily given up, but he didn't. He had that same resilient spirit that kept going. Joshua leading the people into the promised land. Again, we always think about the victory after victory, marching around Jericho, how they took it all. Listen, it was battle after battle, and there's no battle that is fun. And they lost several of them. He had to keep that resilient spirit in him so strong that he could stir it up in the people also. Daniel, when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, killed probably all of his family, literally didn't leave one stone on another. He was hauled as a teenager, as a slave to Babylon. And yet he kept his head down. He kept worshiping God, and God raised him up to become the number 2 ruler in the whole Babylonian Empire. Nehemiah, one of my favorites, who led a group of Jews back to rebuild Jerusalem. And the first thing they had to do, because there were people who wanted to kill him, was rebuild the wall. And I love what he said. The man with in the one arm was a sword, and in the other arm was a trowel to rebuild the wall. That's what you call resilience. Yeah. To make a way, to find a way, even when it seems like there's no way. And of course, the greatest persecutor of Jews in history, Adolf Hitler, who killed 6 million Jews in a matter of about 5 years, who literally set up were like assembly line factories to murder. 6 million in such a short time. He wiped out more than half the Jews in all of Europe, and nothing would have stopped him if he had won that war. Thank God America went out and helped fight that war and stop it. Here's what one of the early prime ministers of Israel said, because after Hitler, you talk about the defeated people, the Jews fought and got the nation of Israel, which has risen up to be powerful. Golda Meir said, we Jews just refuse to disappear. No matter how strong the forces against us, here we are. Millions of bodies broken, buried alive, burned to death, but never has anyone been able to succeed in breaking the spirit of the Jewish people. See, when hard times come, the real question is, are you going to bend or are you going to break? You may have felt like giving up. Maybe right now you're going through something, some part of your life that's a mess, and you don't know what to do. I say to you today, because you are a Christian, you have a resilience of the Jews inside you, the resilience that God has put in you. You can make it. Don't give up. Amen. There's a Jewish man named Eric Greitens who was a Navy SEAL, and he deployed 4 times in the Middle East. He was in special ops, fantastic soldier, got Purple Heart, got all series of medals. But when he left the military, his wife divorced him, and he spiraled down into deep depression. So deep that he was at the point of committing suicide. The grace of God kept him from doing that. And this is what he now has written. He says, everyone has a place where they encounter fear, where they struggle, suffer, and face hardship. We all have battles to fight. Resilience is the key. If you want to be happy, you need resilience. If you want to be successful, you need resilience. And he has it. Not only has he written this book, but last year in 2016, he was elected governor of the state of Missouri. second most famous resident after Bob Harwood. That's where he came from. You know, the reality is that the scripture says about Jews, they have greatly oppressed me from my youth, but they have not gained victory over me. And this is the truth. As I told you, I read about what the church has done to Jews. For 2,000 years, this is what Christians have done to Jews. Persecutions, forced conversions, inquisitions, false accusations, degradations, pogroms, ghettos, expulsion, and under Hitler, total annihilation. We don't have time to talk about all that right now, but let me just talk about the Spanish Inquisition. Perhaps you've heard that term. This is in the late 1400s and early 1500s. This is a picture, a representation of what it was about. You notice on the left of the picture is a cardinal and some priests. And on the right, they are torturing Jews for one reason, until the Jew would say, okay, I'll become a Christian. They would hang him upside down. You can see on the far right, the man in the back, hung by his wrists so that his arms would get dislocated. And then you see they would hang weights on their feet to even enforce more, unless they would say, okay, I'll become a Christian. Incredible torture. And this was not a rare case. This happened with hundreds of thousands of Jews just in Spain during this period. And the church led it all. The church was the one in charge of it all. The church was the one who said they either convert or they die. And if they did not convert under torture, they were burned alive publicly, tied to the stake, fires around them, and killed, unless they would declare themselves Christians. Now we know that definition of Christian has nothing to do with Christianity. But this was the church, the only church, for hundreds of years, over 1,000 years. And this is what the belief was, and this is what the practice was. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella, the king and queen, sent Columbus to discover America, the new land. 3 months later, they were fed up with the Jews who were still alive, and they made it illegal, said no Jew can live in Spain after 90 days. And every Jew who was still alive had to pack up what they could, sell what they could, and of course everybody knew that they didn't have to pay anything for it because they had to sell it. And they had to leave the country with whatever they could carry. They couldn't go up into France because France had already made it against the law for a Jew to live in France. As England did later. For over 300 years it was illegal for a Jew to live in England. You know, we don't know, and I still find out. I'm shocked. I never heard this. I was a pastor for 25 years. I went to Bible school. I was raised in the Catholic Church. I never, ever heard any of this stuff. And I think most Christians today have never heard much of it. And yet it's the reality. And believe me, we don't know about it, but every Jew knows about it. It's been their history. And it's why they are so resistant to the gospel. They don't believe us. Not at all, because of the way we have treated them. And yet, no matter what has come against them, they bounce back. They come again. After Hitler's atrocity in Israel, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, incredible success, and also so many came to America. Most of the Jews in America came either during a great period of migration from 1890 to 1920, or else right after World War II. After World War II, the Jews that were still alive were emaciated. They had no possessions. Many of them came out of the concentration camps like skeletons. Those who came around 1900 were fleeing Russian pogroms. Pogroms is basically an assault to kill as many Jews as you can. And so they fled by the millions to America with nothing again. And yet, Jews in America today have shown a resilience that is astounding. Here's a little bit of information about Jews in America. The percentage of Jewish households with income greater than $50,000 is double that of non-Jews. Conversely, the percentage of Jewish households with income less than $20,000 is half that of non-Jews. 20% of professors at leading universities are Jewish. 25% of all American Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. And yet only 2% of Americans are Jewish. Look at those statistics. It's amazing. 40% of the top Forbes richest Americans are Jewish. 33% of American multimillionaires are Jewish. They came here within the last 100 years with nothing, and yet they've risen like cream. You know, cream, when you beat milk, cream rises to the top. That's the best description. Jews, when they're beaten, they rise to the top time after time after time. Now, you've probably heard it. Some people say it's a conspiracy. The Jews have this secret conspiracy. The bankers, the Jewish bankers, that's why they're so successful. No, that's not it at all. Other people, probably you've heard the term Illuminati. A secret society that rules the world, filled with Jews, doing all this stuff, controlling governments. That's not why. Third group talk about a book that was written several decades ago, the Protocol of the Elders, proven time after time to be fake news. And yet people still throw it out and say, it's the truth, it's the truth. That's why they're so successful. That's not why. The simple reason is God's blessings. They are his people. He says very clearly throughout the Old Testament, if you bless them, you'll be blessed. If you curse them, you'll be cursed. And they know that they are God's chosen people. It's pretty hard to know that when you go through what they've gone through. I've met several people who are Holocaust survivors, Jews. I've got a good friend that was 96 years old, was in a concentration camp and survived. And he loves people. That puts me to shame. He hugs people everywhere he goes. He's a little guy, about this tall, but he's so full of love. And I look at him and say, what would I be like if I had lived in a concentration camp? Because I've learned a little bit about what they were like. Horrific. How do they keep doing it? It's the grace of God and the knowledge. Somehow, it's like pay no attention to what people do, pay no attention to what's happened. God loves me, God is with me, God is going to make a way where it seems to be the only way. You want these blessings? I encourage you to commit to these 12 short sessions. You're going to see things about yourself that are in you, like resilience, and give you the determination and the blessing to follow these things that are already in you, like Williamson and his entrepreneurial spirit. Jews believe they can succeed, and they will succeed no matter what. Can you imagine if every Christian believed that? You can and you will succeed. You can and you will succeed. You can and you will succeed. You can and you... When you start walking with that in your genes, life changes. They believe that. They don't pay attention to the past. They look at God and they look at the promises of God and they look at their history. He's done it time after time after time. We know the New Testament scripture, all things work together for those who love the Lord and call according to his purpose. This is the truth. All things are not good, but God works all things together for good. This is the New Testament verse that correlates with what Joseph told his brother. What you intended for evil, God has worked for good. Jews believe that. I believe it. The more we believe that, the more you don't complain about unfairness or the way the boss is treating you or whatever. Huh? You don't complain, you put your head down, you go to work, and you succeed. Why do Jews do it? Because it's in their spiritual DNA, and it's in yours too. When there was great anti-Semitism in this country, and many young people don't know, that in the last 100 years, Jews were discriminated against tremendously. There were many hospitals who wouldn't admit a Jew. Stores wouldn't let Jews in. No Jews. What did Jews do? Picket? No. Throw stones? No. Declare Jews are beautiful? No. They went and started their own hospitals. And they went and started their own stores. And they did it so good, their hospitals and their stores became more successful than the Gentile stores. Mount Sinai is a good example of that in Miami Beach, a Jewish hospital that's stellar in performance. That's the way they did it. When, for a long time, because of anti-Semitism, which is prejudice against Jews, in schools, Jews were not allowed on any of the popular clubs in school or in any of the sports teams. You know what they did instead? They focused on academics. They focused on studies. The parents said, don't worry that you can't play football. Hit the books. And they proved the ultimate truth of that old expression. Don't worry if they call you a nerd now. In 10 years, they'll call you boss. That's what they did. And that's what they keep doing. You can't keep them down. That's the reality. Now, this DNA of resilience is in the New Testament, too. Of course, ultimately in Jesus. You know, his own townspeople tried to throw him over the cliff. He didn't give up. He just slipped away and kept preaching and teaching, started moving. You know, the Pharisees came against him, always trying to trip him, always coming against him, trying to turn the crowds against him. He didn't care. He just kept doing what he knew he had to do. And of course, his death and resurrection is the ultimate resilience. Nothing like a resurrection when you think it's over. He's dead. He's finished. It's over. He's risen from the dead? That's resilience par excellence. Huh? When in Acts of the Apostles, it talks about the Jews were expelled from Jerusalem. All the leaders decided to get rid of them after they killed Stephen. And they were scattered. They said, okay, that's the end of the Christians. The Christians were expelled from Jerusalem. Figuring that was it. Did we die out? Or did we spread to the whole world and take the gospel to the whole world? Yes. See, that's that resilient spirit too that says, I don't care. We all know the stories. We've heard about the Roman Colosseum. How Christians were brought there and for delight, hard to imagine, for delight, they would let hungry wild animals loose. And they would go for food and tear them limb from limb. Put them on cruises and set them on fire. And yet, a shocking thing happened. The Christians didn't run and scream for their lives. They knelt in prayer as the lions came. They sang worship songs to the Lord as the animals came and the fires rose higher. The crowd didn't understand it. They were looking for gore. They were looking for horrific stuff to cheer at and laugh at and point their fingers at. And instead, they saw people who had something that was amazing and supernatural. And we know what happened. Those same people then would go home, and the Christians who were still out there, when they heard about what happened, they didn't change the way they were living. They still followed Jesus. They still had church, so to speak. They still read the Bible, even though they knew it could be them in the Colosseum tomorrow. The pagans saw that, and little by little, they converted and said, I want this kind of life too, until they took over the whole Roman Empire. So it's in Christians too. When the Pilgrims first came to America, you know, they were Christians who believed God sent them to this land to build a country based on God's Bible. That's why they came. They left Europe, which was a fine society, highly advanced society, to come to America, which is nothing but woods. You know, in the first winter, half the Pilgrims died of starvation because they didn't have food. But they didn't give up, thank God. They knew God had sent them and believed God had said, start this country biblically. And the Judeo-Christian foundation of America is because of the resilience of those early missionaries, those early pilgrims. Wherever missionaries have gone, they've gained that resilience. Going to another country, going to a strange culture, going where they don't know anybody, and start a church and start preaching the gospel. That's incredible. Everything is against them, but they don't care. They know they can do it because God has led them and God is with them. The famous American author Mark Twain wrote this: Jews constitute 1/4% of the human race. The Jews ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his numbers. His contributions to the world in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstract learning are way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all the ages, and he's done it with his hands tied behind him. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, and then faded and passed away. The Greeks and Romans followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time. But it burned. It burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always has been, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jews. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? And all God's people say, God's blessing. Amen. Jews start teaching this in their children at a young age. They teach their kids that they largely control their own destiny. They can choose their past. They can work at their past. They can make things happen. They expose their kids to a broad range of experiences so they can see diverse opportunities and perhaps even create a new one, combining a couple paths. Their kids are told, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And they're told it so much, and the parents are living a life which says it, that the kids believe it too. They give their kids high expectations, and of course, believe me, as we'll see, they also have high standards of learning. But when you add high expectations with high standards, you get high results. Kids, Jewish kids, are free to discover their talents as unique individuals. They're free to make mistakes. And as a result, they get kind of a restless optimism. They're willing to try all kinds of things, experience things, and yet they're always optimistic, no matter what might happen as they're experimenting. They find new answers in every circumstance, no matter what adversity. They're taught you can always find a way. As a matter of fact, Jews have a joke they tell, that the news comes out that in 3 weeks the world is going to be submerged in another flood, like on the days of Noah. There's nothing we can do. The minute the world's going to end in 3 weeks with a flood. And the Dalai Lama gets on the news and he says, people of the world, you need to meditate. You need to find nirvana before the 3 weeks are up. The Pope gets on the news and the Pope says, convert and be baptized. You have 3 weeks to convert and be baptized. And the head rabbi of Jerusalem gets on the news and he takes a little different take. He says, my Jewish people, we have 3 weeks to figure out how to live underwater. No matter what adversity. We'll keep going. As I said, the question is, do you bend or do you break when hard times come? When do you need resilience? It's when you've gone through or have gone through difficult times, setbacks. You've been thrown for a loss. Maybe right now there's parts of your life, it might be personally, or with your family, financially, at work, emotionally, spiritually, something at church. It seems like it's never going to work out. It's a mess. You might have fear of the future or fear of the past coming back to haunt you. Fear of failure, fear that God doesn't love me, or fear of bad health issues, of failures in your family, fear to confess some sin, a fear to start a new relationship. You might be fighting depression, deep hurts in your spirit that seems like your whole life is falling apart. Let me tell you, that has happened to God's people over and over. And I say to you today, so what? You can make it. Don't give up. Resilience is an attitude that grows from your faith, that God is with you. It's like a muscle. It becomes stronger the more you use it. Now, as Eric Greens, the governor of Missouri, said, you have to go through hard times to get stronger. And the truth is, a lot of Christians and a lot of preachers want to act as if, oh no hard times, just keep smiling, just praise the Lord. And they are in denial about some deep problems in their life, or their family's life, or their church's life, or around them. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with problems and messes, because that shows us more and more that it's not us, it's the grace of God. Amen. Resilience says, don't let hard times stop. And here's a few steps that you might remember if you or someone you know is facing these kinds of hard times. Number one, remember that God is with you. He's on your side. He will help you. Jesus said, I will never leave you or forsake you. You don't have to pray for God to come, for the Holy Spirit to come. He's never left you. Second, don't stew in your problems. You know what a stew is, right? Keep going over and over, telling your friends what happened. Keep thinking it over. Keep over and over the problem, the mess, the difficulties, the challenge, the mistakes. Don't do that. Number three, don't play the victim. Don't blame others. Don't, oh, woe is me, pointing the finger. Look at the situation, be realistic when you evaluate it, but don't feel like it's everybody's problem but yours. And I'd also like to say this, don't judge other people who are going through it. You know, especially Christians, but anybody. You know, we kind of know that we're supposed to love the sinners but hate the sin, is the famous expression. But we never hear much about love Christians even when they're sinning. You know, you think about David and Bathsheba. David committed adultery and then worked out to have her husband killed. And he was a leader of God's people. What if a pastor, a leader in the church did that? Man, he'd be stoned and driven out of town in most churches. He shouldn't be, because it easily could happen to you or me. We all face temptations. And we all know it's not that we're so strong, it's that His grace is so strong. His forgiveness is so wide-reaching. And He will forget things and throw them as far as the east is from the west. But when someone's going through it, if you see a Christian, you know, going through addiction, alcoholism, committed adultery, or back to street life as a thug, don't put them down, don't shy away, don't give up on them. Pray they find the resilience to bounce back. That's what they need, and that's what we all need at times. Don't judge them. There's no redemption without suffering. We all have to go through stuff. Stuff to be a Christian about it. Stuff happens. You know what I'm really saying, right? Number 4 on this list, accept responsibility and repent if you need to. If you are part of the problem, admit it. Repent. Admit it. Get clean. If you need to go confess it to someone you've hurt, do it. And then, number 5, you can put a period and move on. That's the point at which you can say, okay, that's past. It's now time to look at the future. Time to move ahead. And the first thing is, once again, remember your heritage. Remember that Joseph, the prisoner, is in your DNA. That Moses, the murderer, is in your DNA. That David, the slave teenager, is in your DNA. And Jesus, despised by men, became the King of Kings. And that spirit is in you too. And that will help you to find the courage and start taking action. And action might mean setting some goals. It doesn't mean actually necessarily doing something physically. It can mean that, but usually you need to kind of assess and decide, okay, where do I start now? What can I do now? What are my options? What are my possibilities? Talking to people, reading, finding out what you might be able to do. Eric Greitens, the ex-Navy SEAL governor of Missouri, also said this: to move through pain to wisdom, through fear to courage, through suffering to strength requires resilience. Because you can't have happiness, success, or anything else worth having without meeting hardship along the way. Pain can break us or make us wiser. Suffering can destroy us or make us stronger. Fear can cripple us or it can make us more courageous. It's resilience that makes the difference. This is a picture of an olive tree that's actually in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was praying the night he was arrested. This tree and a few others there, they say, was alive when Jesus was there. 2,000 years old. Look at the size of that trunk, and yet look at the small branches. Once again, there's been pruning after pruning after pruning. I don't know how much you know about fruit trees, but you have to prune them back to produce better fruit. If you don't cut them back, sometimes dramatically, it won't keep producing good fruit. Olive trees are that way. Jews are that way. We are all that way. We go through hard times. This is why Jews are compared to the olive tree. They have suffered horribly. They've been cut back time after time. And I'll tell you what, the more I have learned, Jews are my heroes. Jews are my heroes. And I believe that Jews are God's heroes. I believe God wants the world to look at his people and say, there must be a God. Look what they've gone through and how they've come back. There must be a God. You know, what's a hero? You think it's something like Star Wars or one of the movies about a hero. A hero usually starts out as a nobody, just an ordinary person. And then adversity comes, and somehow they make their way through it. And more problems come, and somehow they make through that. And more problems come, and they make their way through that. And suddenly they're getting better and stronger and higher. And then usually toward the end of the movie, something absolutely horrific and unimaginable happens, and you go, nowhere. And they find a way. That's what a hero is. And that, my friends, in a nutshell, is the history of Jews. Hitler being the ultimate no way after that. And yet they've come back shining brighter than ever. This hero gene is in you too. I believe each one of you has the seed of a hero in you. This determination to never quit, to never say no, to never die, to not care what other people think, what other people say, what anybody else is doing, what church policy is, but to go with God leading you, to live the life and fully become the person he created you to be. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to be thrown for losses, but God's resilience is in you. So I say to you, bounce back and prosper. Let's pray. Father, you are someone who does things like we would never do it. We would never think that suffering has to happen for growth. But the crucifixion had to happen for there to be a resurrection of all of us into eternal life. That the Jews would have to go through what they've gone through to become even more your chosen people. We never would have thought that we each would have had to go through the hard times we've all gone through, and that we're going to go through, in order to become stronger in character, more dedicated toward righteousness, and more solid in the people as you have created us to be. I pray, Father, for those who are listening. I pray, God, that in their deepest fears and worries about life, in them, in their family, around them, at work, wherever it might be, in those deep places, you light a new light today. A light that says, you can make it. Don't ever give up. Don't ever quit. Don't ever quit. Don't ever. People will tell you to quit. People will tell you you can't make it. And God is saying, you can make it no matter what. And Father, with that, we will give you all the thanks and glory. In Jesus' name. Amen. And amen. Thank you again for coming.